Shalom and good day, my brothers and sisters. Coming back up here with some information that will help us get understanding about the Pharisees Passover, because we see that the Messiah, Yahusha, he followed the Passover that was kept in Torah. In other words, he followed our Father instructions when keeping the Passover. But when we read the gospel from, Matthew to John, we see that the Pharisees was doing something different. And the Father had helped me found some information to give us some understanding why was they doing what they was doing. Okay. And this information that I'm sharing today is not like this is it. It's going to be something that we're going to be building upon as the Father give us understanding of what the Pharisees was doing. So it would be giving us some groundbreaking. Okay. So what you see before is a picture and it say like the lamb for our offering, just to give us an idea what was these Pharisees doing. Okay. Before we start looking, let me get this out the way because I will be sharing some copyright material with you. As the Father is having us walk through the playlist series known as Confession and Forgiveness, Let the Healing Begin and Let Freedom Reign, the Father has led us to the letter that Paul has written to the Romans. And through that letter, because right now we're still in chapter 11, he has revealed a lot of mysteries to us. He has taken us back to the beginning, given us understanding on why our Father can judge all of mankind, um, whether they was under the covenant or whether they was not, whether they received salvation or whether they did not. And Paul's letter to the Romans is very deep, my brothers and sisters. So when you get some time, check that out. Um, he give us great understanding about the law of sin and death versus the law of faith and the law of the spirit of life. And unfortunately, many assemblies or many churches or denominations or religions been teaching differently because they didn't understand Paul. And to understand Paul, we saw that we have to come in the whole volume of the book, just like the Messiah did. We have to come in the whole volume of the book to understand what Paul was saying. Okay? Which bring us to this. Excuse me, my brothers and sisters. I have to clear my throat. Now the Father is revealing more unto us through Paul's letters about giving us understanding about there will be deliverance in Zion and in Jerusalem. The prophecy of the deliverer slash redeemer. And through that, we see he's giving us great understanding about the prophetic message that the Father had me to speak against Baal, who is Satan. And we're seeing how this also tie into the letter of Romans as we go through Romans chapter 11, looking at verse 26 and 27. So part 2 will be coming out soon, and check that out because Father has revealed unto us there are 4 groups. I know in the past I say 3, I was still correct, but he's breaking it down a little more further for us. Um, there are 4 groups, and each of these groups have a certain prophetic prophecy, or I mean, certain prophecies that's upon them based on their heart, their faith, and their works, um, as well as based on grace and mercy, as we see. Okay. So today in this message, we're going to look at East versus West, the Pharisees' Passover, Torah or Talmud. Um, Is it Torah based? This is the question we have to ask because we know Talmud means or law. So, what was the Pharisees keeping on that day when our blessed Messiah was sacrificed. I mean, not sacrificed, crucified, on that blessed day, which was Aviv 14. Okay. Now to these other pictures that I have for you. We're going to look at this word called, and forgive me if I mispronounce it, it's Shagagah. Shagagah. Sometimes you may see it spelled as with H, Agigah, instead of with the C. But we're going to look at this word because it relates to what the Pharisees were doing, as well as brothers and sisters, we're going to have to go back into Torah and we're going to have to look at all those different offerings and look at our Father instructions. Like when you look at the free will offerings or the voluntary offering, we have burnt offering, we have peace offering. When we have the meat offering, there's two types of meat offerings, but this one is talking about your grain offerings, like your bread offerings. And then when you look at the obligatory offering, that means these often must be offered. You are obliged to offer them. Okay, these are your sin offering, your trespass offerings. But this is just a touch. Whereas we know there's many types of offerings in Torah, such as the sin of ignorance offering. Okay, trespass. I'm sorry, I ought to mention that. But there's many types, and we need to get familiar with these offerings and to understand when are they offered. Okay, and that's very important to see what the Pharisees, what they were doing, if it lines up with Torah or does it lines up with the Talmud, which is the oral law. Okay, so now that we have that out the way, when I type in the word Shagagah on Google, some of the things we're going to look at. And let me see if I want to start with this one or if I want to start with the other one. We're going to look at the Webster dictionary, but we'll start with the Wikipedia definition. And I'm trying to see. Okay, now I know why I have that one up. Okay. Okay. With the Wikipedia definition, it says, let me click on this so we can expound it. To give us understanding of this Hebraic word, Shagagah. And it is a Hebrew word, and it literally means festival offerings. It is one of the tractates compromising Moim, one of the six orders of the Mishnah, a collection of Jewish traditions included in the Talmud. It deals with the three pilgrimage festivals. And your three pilgrimage festivals, my brothers and sisters, are Passover, Pesach, Shavuot, known as Pentecost, and Sukkot, known as the Feast of Tabernacles. This is very important. So when we look at Shagagah, it is dealing with the offerings that are brought during the time of these holy festivals. As you know, Passover is the day before the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So I just say an 8-day festival. And we know Shavuot is a 1-day festival. And we know Sukkot is also a 8-day festival as well. Okay. Um, so it deals with the three pilgrimage festivals and the pilgrimage offering that men were supposed to bring in Jerusalem. So that's taking us to Deuteronomy 16. Remember, the men that are required to come to these three pilgrimage feasts must not come empty-handed when they come. Okay. Also, you want to look at Leviticus 23, and also for further study of the different offerings, read the book of Leviticus as well. At the middle of the second chapter, the text discusses topics of ritual purity. The tractate contains 3 chapters, spanning 27 pages in the Villa edition Shash, this is not Chase of the Babylonian Talmud. Underline that word, Babylonian Talmud, because the Father had me speak two messages dealing with the Burning Man Festival and dealing with Bel is confound. Everything relates, right? Confusion. Okay. Making it relatively short, the second chapter contains much eso- eso- esoteric Agadah, Agadah, describing creation, and the Merkava. It is content and relatively light and, and uncomplicated, except for the third chapter. Okay, something to look at, because we got to get understanding why they was doing what they was doing, and you'll see why this is very important as we are understanding the events that pertains to the gospel. So here we have a chart that lists the six orders of the Mishah, and as we see, Moab means festival, and they have other categories dealing with the seas, dealing with women, damages, holies, and purities. That's something to check out in your spare time. Okay. Now we're going to look at the Webster Dictionary. I thought it had something to hear. Forgive me, my brothers and sisters. I thought it had something to hear, but anyway, it did not. So I can close this out. Sorry. Okay. Sorry about that, my brothers and sisters. Forgive me. And the reason why I'm doing this, I know why. I had all this set to do on a day or two prior, and for some reason, you know how technology do. So I thought it would be best doing another day. So a lot of stuff is not like really fresh in my mind, but however, the Father's gonna work it out. So basically what we learned about Shekagah, this is an offering, okay? And this offering is brought during a time of festivals, like during a time of a feast, which is taking me back to Torah, right? And we look at what are the things that our people brought during the time of the feast, okay? So it's going to give us understanding what these Pharisees are doing with this Shagagah, okay, with the festival offerings, all right? And then we can get to understand maybe why they attached the title Passover to it, okay? Now I want to take you to the book. We always got to set the foundation before I get into an article that would give us more understanding of what these Pharisees was doing that day on the V14, on the V of Eve, ABIB 14, okay? Giving us understanding what it was doing on that day when our blessed Messiah was crucified. As we see, as we learn about the different events that took place on that day, it go in hand with Torah. It go in hand with the offerings that was commanded for the Israelites to present or to perform before our blessed Father. Okay, and we see that it all lines up to when the Messiah was crucified and during the time when he was in Sheol, which is hell, the heart of the earth, and then to the time when he was resurrected as the first fruit or the first of the resurrection, which was the Aviv 16th. And I have to say this because it aligns up with the day when the manna ceased and it lines up with the day when we offer the first fruits of the body harvest, which is the Omer, okay, the sheaf weight offering. So it's very important that we look at these things because not only give us understanding about the Messiah, but it's going to give us understanding about the prophecies that pertain to the four groups. Okay. So I'm going to read John chapter 18, chapter summary unto you. It says, Judas betrayeth Yahusha. The officials fall to the ground. Peter smitteth off Malchus' ear. Yahusha is taken and led unto Annas and Caiaphas, or I think they say Caiaphas, forgive my tongue. Peter's denial. Yahusha examined before Caiaphas. His arraignment before Pilate. His kingdom. The Jews asked Barnabas to be let loose. So we're going to go down to verse 28. Verse 28. Verse 28 says, and I'm at right here, my brothers and sisters. It says, Then led they Yahusha from Caiaphas. Sorry, y'all, my tongue. Let me read it properly, but I'm going to just say C instead. Then led they Yahusha from C unto the hall of judgment, and it was early, and they themselves went not into the judgment hall, lest they should be defiled, but that they might eat the Passover. Do y'all hear that? Listen to what is being said here. Okay, so we're looking at those who was accompanied along with the Pharisees on that day. It said that they brought the Messiah to the judgment hall. That was the hall where Pontius Pilate was at. And it was early in the morning, early in the day, or you could say early in the morning. And they could not go into the judgment hall because if they did, they would be defiled. Okay, go back to Torah to understand why it's dealing with being accompanied with a Gentile. They would be unclean. Okay, but and also I know they partake in the different cleansing, okay, instructions, but that they might eat the Passover. And I often wonder what they mean by they might eat the Passover because we know with the instruction of the Passover lamb that was sacrificed between the two evenings or at the going down of the sun, we know that it had to be um, eating and discarded, or what's the word I'm looking for? Put an end to, or where the remains, in other words, there could be no remains left when the morning came. So what was this Passover that they was talking about? Because my brothers and sisters in the past, I just thought they just weren't keeping Passover right, you know. Um, but there was a brother, and I think his name was Zion Letts, who brought out some things about the oral law to give us understanding, about these Pharisees, because as in the video I shared prior with y'all, he also brought out that they sit on the seat of Moses, so they knew the instructions of Torah, even though they carry out their forefathers' traditions. Okay, so this is something we want to look at, and we're going to click on this here for the side notes. These are the side notes for John chapter 18 when we're looking at verse 28, for we can see that they brought them to Pilate's house, which is the judgment hall. And the verses that is referenced to is Matthew chapter 27, verse 2, and Acts chapter 10, verse 28. So now that we have this out the way, now let us go straight to the article. So the article that I found was done by the Agape Bible Study. They give us a chart here to condense what the article was saying. So before we go through the chart, I think it was only properly or properly for us to read the article first, and then we can understand what's in the chart, as well as they give us references that we can go to not only in the Bible, but also in the Talmud. So we can begin to understand what were these Pharisees doing on this holy day, which is known as Passover, Aviv 14. Now, I found this article through a website called scribe.com. This is where I'm getting the article from. And it was uploaded by this person. I cannot say their name. Starts with an M. If I say I'm scared I might mispronounce it, but it was done on March the 4th in 2014. And the title of this article was The Daily Time Divisions and the Talmud Sacrifice in the Old Covenant. So they're talking about Torah and the Old Testament, the old marriage. So we're going to read a description here. The description says, the new day for the Jews began at sunset and was divided into 24 divisions of time. The 12 divisions of darkness was measured by 4 watches. The 12 daylight hours was measured by 4 different time divisions. Original title was the original title was Daily Time Division and the Talmud Sacrifice in the Old Covenant. Copyright, attribution, non-commercial, BY-NC. And then, it's go on how you can download it. Okay. So daily time division and the Talmud sacrifice in the old covenant, the old marriage, right? Comes from the agapeBiblestudy.com site. It says here, and I think we already read it, but we'll read it again. The Romans divided the day into 24 divisions of time with 2 12-hour periods. Now, as we're reading this, we know the Hebrews was giving a lot of sacred things before the other Gentile nations, okay? Or we carry on the sacred things from our forefathers because when you study the Gentile nations, they had strayed away from a lot of those things that was given to us by our Father in heaven. So you will see some differences as you study their history, how they came to what they came to when keeping of time. Okay. So anyway, we're going to keep reading the article as is, but just keep that in mind when you do your research. Beginning each new day at 12 midnight. So for the Romans, they begin their day at 12 midnight. Okay. But for the Hebrews, we begin our day at sundown or sunset. Again, we follow our Father in heaven. And they give us a reference to Pliny the Elder, Natural History, Volume 2, 79, 188. We keep Roman time. The new day for the Jews began at sunset and was divided into 24 divisions of time, with 12 divisions of dark and 12 divisions of daylight. The 12 divisions of darkness were measured by 4 watches. Okay, so I like how this paragraph is making the difference. So this is something that we want to look at. Remember, the Romans divided their day into 24 divisions of time with 2 12-hour periods, and they began their new day at 12 midnight. Okay. But when we look at the Hebrews, okay, and I like how this article is saying that in the present day time, we keep in the Roman time because we are in the fourth beast kingdom, which is the Roman kingdom. Do not be deceived. We are still in the Roman Empire. Okay. This is why many of us are following the Gregorian calendar because it's Roman based, and we're not following our Father's calendar, which comes from heaven, because we are in the Roman kingdom. Okay. But Hebrews, we begin our day at sundown, at sunset, okay? And the day was divided into 20 So we have about 24 hours. But it was further divided in divisions of dark and divisions of daylight time. So we have what 24 hours, 12 of them was division of darkness, of daylight. But for the Romans, even though they hours, they didn't do as the Hebrew do. They have this 12-hour periods because both of their 12-hour periods have darkness and light. Okay. So the 12 division of darkness was measured by 4 watches. This is done with Hebrews now. So the Hebrews divided up the darkness by 4 watches. So we have 12 hours, right? So the first watch started from sundown to 9 p.m. The second watch started from 9 p.m. to midnight, which is 12. The third watch started from midnight or 12 midnight to 3 a.m. And the fourth watch starts from 3 a.m. to dawn. You want to get familiar with that because you're going to see it in the Bible, those watches. Okay, let's go on to read. The 12 daylight hours was measured by 4 different time divisions that coincided with the daily sacrifice and whole burnt offering of the 2 lambs at the temple in Jerusalem. Okay, y'all hear that? The 12 daylights hours was measured by 4 different time divisions. Okay, that coincided with the daily sacrifice and whole burnt offering of the 2 lambs at the temple in Jerusalem. This sacrifice was called the Tamid, also spelled Tamid in Hebrew and pronounced Tamid, Tamid. Okay, and it meaning standing. So this daily sacrifice, which is known in the Hebrew tongue, is what? Known as Talmud. And Talmud means what? Standing, as in perpetual sacrifice. Exodus chapter 29, verse 28. I mean, Exodus, excuse me, y'all. Exodus chapter 29, verse 38. This is what you must offer on the altar: 2 yearly males each day in perpetuity. The first lamb you will offer at dawn, and the second lamb at midday, literally meaning it is between the twilight. Bayan ha idirat. Sorry, y'all. Forgive my tongue. Bayan ha areb, meaning the midpoint between dawn and dusk, which is 12 noon. See Exodus chapter 29, verse 38, Exodus chapter 29, verse 38 to 46. Leviticus chapter 6, verse 1 through 16. Numbers chapter 28, verse 4 through 8. 1 Kings chapter 18, verse 29, and 2 Kings chapter 16, verse 15. We're going to go to that verse, my brothers and sisters, okay? The time divisions of the day and daily prayer times was associated with the perpetual, which literally means standing, sacrifice of the 2 perfected lambs. So this is dealing with the continual burnt sacrifice or the daily sacrifice that we learn about in those chapters. And notice that it means, the Hebrew word means tamid, which means what? Standing. Well, I'm sorry. Perpetual means standing. Okay. Okay, I had it right. And tamid in Hebrew means standing. Forgive me, my brothers and sisters. Because when we look at our blessed Messiah, he stood for y'all. He didn't go to the left, nor did he go to the right. He stood firm for Yah. Okay. Look at how those accused him. He still stood firm. Okay. So now we're going to go to that verse because I do want to look at verse Exodus chapter 29, verse 38. Making sure I got the right verse. And we're going to go to 38. So I'm in Exodus chapter 29, verse 38. And the chapter summary says the sacrifice and ceremonies of consecrating the priest, the continual burnt offering, that is your daily sacrifice. Yahuwah's promise to dwell among the children of Israel. We're going to look at verse 28. Make sure I got the right chapter. Because, oh, 38. Verse 38. I'm like, where is it? Okay, 38. All right. Verse 38 says, now this is that which thou shalt offer upon the altar, 2 lambs of the first year, day by day, continually. The one lamb thou shalt offer in the morning, and the other lamb thou shalt offer at even. Now we talked about that between the 2 evenings. Look at that playlist. But I'm already going to tell you what they put in that article. I have to make sure. I don't think it was done correctly, but I'm going to go back and make sure. But let us keep reading. The one lamb thou shalt offer in the morning, and the other lamb thou shalt offer in the evening. For we learn through the book of Jubilees and through the work of Josephus, the second lamb was offered in the 3 p.m. hour. That's the Roman time, which is the, I believe in the Hebrew time, it is the night hour. Okay. And we learned that that part of daylight was given over to the evening. 1/3 of daylight was given over to the evening, okay, for my studies. But for those who are new to that knowledge, that fact, or that truth, there is a playlist on the channel dealing with between the 2 evenings that would give you understanding. And I was seeking, I find that video to attach to this video to give you more understanding. Okay. And we'll pause there. So for your record, you want to write down Exodus chapter 29, verse 38 through 39. And we know that this daily sacrifice had to be done every day, twice a day, one in the morning and the other at even. And that was usually done in the 3 p.m. hour when we converted to Roman time. In the Hebraic time, it's the night hour. And then like the morning time, I believe it is the 3rd hour, which is 9 a.m. in the Romans time. Okay. So they said the first lamb, when I go back here, I want to make sure I read this correctly. Okay, this is dealing with the first lamb. You will offer at dawn, and the second lamb at midday. Literally meaning literally meaning it's between the twilight. Bayan Had Arab, meaning the midpoint between dawn and dusk, which is 12 noon. Okay? And we'll get more understanding about what they're saying because some things is coming back to my mind what they're saying on this. But we'll see what they're saying on this. Okay? So take this time now to pause the screen to write down these things to get understanding. But notice one thing that this lamb is for what? Perpetual. Okay? Perpetual means what? Standing. Tamid. Okay? This is very important and that we understand this. So when we look at the daily time divisions, when we look at the first hour, it is said that the first lamb is brought out and tied to the altar at dawn. And that is found in Mishnah Tamid, chapter 3, verse 2 to chapter 3, verse 3. So when we convert it, this is what the Pharisees were doing now. When we look from dawn to 9 a.m., the high priest prepares the altar. See Exodus chapter 29, verse 39, Leviticus chapter 6, verse 1 through 6, and Mishnah Tamid chapter 1, verse 2. Okay? So the high priest prepared also. So that means that that lamb is brought out and tied to the altar at dawn. Okay? So that's dealing with the rising of the sun. Well, I'm sorry. That's dealing with the light appearing in the heavens. Forgive me, my brothers and sisters. Dawn is dealing with the light that you see appearing to the heaven. So this high priest is tying that lamb to the altar from dawn to 9 a.m. So the land is standing. Do y'all see that? From dawn to 9 a.m. So when we go to the third hour, all right, from 9 a.m. to noon, the first lamb is sacrificed at 9 a.m. Mishah, this which is the Talmud, chapter 3, verse 7. Chapter 3, verse 7. And when we convert that to Roman time, it is 9 a.m. So 9 a.m. to noon, the first lamb is sacrificed at 9 a.m. 9 a.m. is the first hour of prayer. See Acts chapter 2, verse 15. The temple gates open. I think that's Shakaret, which is morning. Morning. Okay. Now we're beginning to understand what these Pharisees was talking about. Okay. But let us keep going. In the 6th hour, now this is the Hebrew 6th hour, and when we look at the 6th hour, it is converted to Roman time, which is noon to 3 p.m. And we know noon is what? The 12th hour. The second lamb is brought out. Now notice here, the second lamb is brought out and tied to the altar at noon. Okay, so this second lamb is brought out and tied to the altar at noon. Noon is the second hour of prayer. Acts chapter 3, verse 1, chapter 10, verse 9, which is mitzvah, meaning gift offering. Gift offering. Okay? So as we compare, the first lamb is brought out from when we see the first light in the sky, which is dawn, to 9 a.m. So he is tied to the altar. He must be what? Standing. Standing. Okay? Because that's what that goes with the word perpetual. Also go with the Hebrew word tamid. Picture that in your mind. They tie him to the altar. So that means that the high priest prepares the altar. He's preparing the altar for the sacrifice. So the lamb must be tied to the altar. Okay? For the preparation of the sacrifice. All right? So when we get to the third hour of the Hebrew time, which is 9 a.m., this lamb is sacrificed. The same time when the Messiah is put upon the cross, he is crucified. This is why we got to understand what is going on. Do y'all see the connection now? All right. And then we have what? Prayers. Then we will look at the 6th hour of the Hebrew time that translate to what? Noon. Noon. This is a time where the second lamb is brought out and tied to the altar as what? Standing, perpetual, tamid. And this is the same time when the darkness came. Okay. All right. 6th hour. When we look at the 9th hour, all right, which we're going to read now, and we convert that to 3 p.m. to sundown or sunset. Okay. So we know in the 9th hour, this is the second lamb is sacrificed at 3 p.m. So at 3 p.m., the lamb is sacrificed. You can find that in the Antiquity of the Jews, chapter 4, book 14, chapter 4, section 3, um, 14, colon, 65. And follow special laws, you can find it in, yes, follow special laws. I think that's section 1. You can find it in 35, 169. Okay. So in the 9th hour, which is 3 p.m., the second lamb is sacrificed at 3 p.m. And from the 3 p.m. to sunset, 3 p.m. is the 3rd hour of prayer. Acts chapter 3, verse 1, chapter 10, verse 9. Ma'aray, ma'aviv, viv, ma'aviv, which means evening. Our afternoon is the Jewish evening. Next day began at sundown. Do y'all see this? It is confirming the book of Jubilees. It is confirming on Josephus, how the Father gave the third part of daylight over to evening. So it says 3 hours of prayer. See Mishnah Bakrak Hot. Forgive my tongue, but let us pause here. So we're going to see the connection now. So we know the Messiah gave up his spirit. In the English language, they would say ghost. He gave up what? The spirit, the breath. He died. Okay. And he died in that 3 p.m. hour, which is the 9th hour of the Hebrew time. It is the same hour when you have darkness to leave. Okay. Do y'all see how everything is lining up? It is also the same hour when the second lamb is sacrificed, signifying his death. Okay. The first lamb signified the crucifixion, but the second lamb signified his death. We also have other references like the book of Josephus, which is Antiquities, and we have the book of Philo. This is a good article, y'all. I recommend y'all to get a copy of. Let us keep going to read. It said dawn and high noon was easily determined, but the actual sacrifices 3 hours later at 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. were determined by the use of a sundial or a water clock. These times of sacrifice directly correspond with the time of Yahusha passion, even though these sacrifices were set 1500 to 1300 years before the birth of Yahusha. Yahusha the Messiah fulfilled the Tamid sacrifice. Do y'all see now? So it's giving us understanding how he fulfilled Torah, how he fulfilled the law of Torah. So those earthly sacrifices represent the spiritual sacrifice that would take place, or the Messiah sacrifice that would take place. Now y'all begin to understand why in the past, why I tell y'all that he is those sacrifices that we see in Torah. Do not worry about partaking in them because he covers you. What the Father wants you to do is to go back and read and remember those things, okay? And understand the spiritual meaning of those things, because it's going to give you understanding of the future or what is yet to come. Okay, it's going to prepare your heart so you will have a delight in partaking in his holy feast days when the Father comes and bring his eternal kingdom. This is why we keep these feast days as a day of remembrance to remind us what what is coming, and also to remind us what they mean, and to give us understanding of the mysteries. Okay, and to give us understanding of the prophecies. All right, let us keep reading, y'all. This is a good article. Each day for the daily Tammuz sacrifice, two males a year old in their perfection are chosen for the sacrifice, along with two cakes of flour. Of two cakes of fine flour mixed with oil, one offered with each lamb and wine. What is the significance of the two lambs? The Son of Yahuwah has come to redeem man as the perfect lamb of sacrifice in his humanity and in his divinity. Do y'all see the connection? Remember, I told y'all he is the bread of heaven. He offered his blood, which go along with the wine. Okay, the oil represent the anointing. This is why he's called Messiah, the anointed one. Okay, the bread of heaven, or the bread, represent what? The word that shall what? Keep us alive eternally. We should not live by bread alone, but we shall live by the word that comes out of Yahuwah's mouth. Okay, y'all see how all this are connected, and the lamb had to be perfected, meaning they are upright. They are righteous. There's no spot or blemish, showing that he's fulfilled Torah, cross every T and dot every I. Hallelujah. Let us keep reading. At dawn, the first lamb of the daily sacrifice is tied to the altar. So this is the first lamb that's offered in the morning, okay? And so this lamb is tied to the altar at dawn, right? Yahusha was condemned by the Sanhedrin, the Jewish law court, at dawn. Now we can see all this connected. Matthew 26, verse 63 to 66. Mark chapter 15, verse 61 to 15. I'm sorry. Mark chapter 15, verse 61 to Mark. There must have been an error here. It got to be chapter 16, verse 1. Okay. Then we go Luke chapter 22, verse 66 to Luke chapter 23, verse 1. Then we got Misha of the Talmud, chapter 3, verse 2 to chapter 3, verse 3. After Messiah was condemned by the high priest and the Sanhedrin, he is immediately brought before the Roman governor Pilate. The Greek, the word poroi, can mean very early in the morning or dawn. See John chapter 18, verse 28. So, like I said, this is why when we study the Most High account, everything, bring everything in connection, y'all. Going back to Genesis 1:14, remember I told y'all, yeah, we all need to go out and study the phases of the daylight and the phases of the night. So when you see the daylight coming in, which is day, the first thing you see is the light appearing in the heavens. Then later on, then the rising of the sun. And then at the end of daylight, or the end of the day for the Hebrews, okay, then you have the going down the sun, but the light of the heavens still remain. Do y'all see? How all this important, why we have to study these things. If we don't study the Father's calendar, if we don't study the Hebraic ways, we're not going to understand the gospel. We're not going to understand the scripture. Okay, let us keep going. Oh, it is also the name of the fourth Roman watch, which is 3 a.m. to dawn. Okay. Later in John 19:14, John writes that Yahusha is condemned by Pilate on preparation day, equal the sixth day of the week, and the day the Jews prepared the Sabbath. That is correct. Well, I'm reading, y'all. That is correct. Friday, just go with Exodus chapter 16, y'all. Exodus chapter 16. Let me read this again. Later in John 19:14, John writes that Yahushua is condemned by Pilate on preparation day, which is the sixth day of the week, and the day the Jews prepare for the Sabbath. Okay? Now they're gonna put this heathen word Friday, but if they study at the calendar, we know Friday has nothing to do with this. But let's keep reading. At about the sixth hour, if John is using Roman time instead of Hebrew time in the gospel, he is in accord with the synoptic gospel accounts, which all record that Yahusha is brought to Pilate just after dawn. That is correct. Now, as far as if John was using Roman time, I'm not going to go by that or say that's what it is. I'm looking at the gospel in its whole, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And by studying Torah, you will know what is the correct time without a shadow of doubt, without having to go to any other source. I believe that whoever translated that into English, and I don't think it was during the King James period. I think it was an error on the reprinting of the King James Bible. That's what I personally believe. But however, it doesn't matter about my personal belief because if we go in Torah, Torah is going to give us the correct time of what the biblical events or when the biblical events took place. So there's no argument about that. That's what I'm trying to tell y'all. It's no arguing, there's no debate because we have Torah that will confirm the dates. Why do y'all think I keep saying that Messiah was resurrected on Aviv 16th? Because Torah will back me up. When you read the book of Joshua, the manna ceased on that day. When you read Torah, that is the day of the sheepway offering that even Josephus confirmed unto us when they offer it. Okay? So the sixth day, all right? The sixth day. Now, of course, in their time, they're going to translate it to Friday based on, whatever calendar that we're going by now. But notice this, the Hebrew calendar did not align with the Gregorian calendar when you study it. But let us keep going. So it said if John is using Roman time instead of Hebrew time in his gospel, he is in accord with the synoptic gospel accounts, which all record that Yahusha brought to Pilate just after dawn. Again, I'm not going to go with that because when you try to compare all those verses, trying to figure out what is Hebrew time or what is Roman time that John is using, you're going to get confused. Remember, I'm just going to look at it as a mistranslation. Okay, let us keep going. It will be more reasonable for a late first century, largely Gentile Roman culture Christian community in Asia Minor to be using Roman time. Do y'all hear that? But y'all know how the Hebrews is. Even Josephus writes that they frowned upon learning a Greek language because they felt it was profane, something that a Hebrew shouldn't do, you know. Mm-mm. If you understand about the Hebrews, they follow what the Father gave them. They follow that calendar in Genesis 1:14. Okay? This is why we say 6 hour. We don't say 12 o'clock or we don't use the Roman time, in other words. Okay. All right, but let us keep reading. If this is the case, then John is indicating it is about 6 a.m. our time. We use Roman time. So when you look at John 19, verse 14, I can't say what that is, but I can say by looking at all the other scriptures, I know that that was 6 a.m. Because like I say, we got Torah to back us up. Okay. So there's no debate on this. I believe that again it was a mistranslation, but in time, Father will give us more evidence. But our evidence that we can stand by now is Torah. Okay. And looking at the Hebrew times and the Hebrews calendar. And this come from our Father above. Remember that. They was following what our Father gave them above. They was not following the Romans. Okay. Um Then to consider the importance of symbolism in John's gospel, it may be that the reference to the number six is entirely symbolic to help us recall that it was the sixth day. Now they're going deep now. The sixth day that Yahuwah created man, and it's on the sixth day of the week at the sixth hour that Messiah will begin his redemption of man through his passion and sacrifice. Do y'all hear that? So what they're saying, the sixth day of the Hebrew week, okay, is the same day when the Father created man, which is the sixth day or the 6,000th year, okay. Um, at the sixth hour, and they translate that into Roman time, that's 6 a.m., that the Messiah would begin his redemption of man through his passion and sacrifice. See how everything lined up with numbers. Just as the high priest selected the lamb, and remember, 6,000 years is a day unto Yahuwah. Father want me to tell you that. What will back me up is the book of Songs and the book of Peters. Okay, let us keep going. Just as the high priest selected the lamb of sacrifice for the sins of the people in the Feast of Atonement, Yahusha is the last true sacrifice selected by the high priest. He is the perfect lamb of Yahuwah, chosen to die for the sins of the people and pronounced innocent without sin by a Gentile Roman. Perfect. Do y'all hear that? He was innocent. And even Pilate announced it. Okay. So at the third hour, which is what, 9 a.m., the first lamb of the daily sacrifice is sacrificed for the sins of the people on the great sacrificial altar at the temple. Yahushua was crucified at the third hour Jewish time, which is what? When we convert the third hour Jewish time to Roman time, it's 9 a.m. Mark chapter 15, verse 25. They crucify him and share out his clothing, casting lots to decide what each should get. It was the third hour when they crucify him. That is in the book of Mark. Lining up with the first what? Daily sacrifice. At noon, the second lamb of the daily sacrifice is brought out and tied to the altar. This is the second daily sacrifice. Remember, it's perpetual. He is the Talmud, so he must be what? Standing. Just like on that cross. Standing in position. Can't go nowhere. Okay. Do y'all see how everything is connected? The sky turned dark at noon. Matthew chapter 24, verse 45. From the sixth hour, there was darkness all over the land until the ninth hour. Also, Mark 15, verse 33, Luke chapter 23, verse 44 to 49. And the prophet Amos will back that up too. When darkness came in the midday or in the 12th hour. I'm sorry, in the sixth hour, which is the 12 noon hour of Roman time. Do y'all see how all this connected? Hallelujah. Okay, this is getting good. So at the ninth hour, which is what Roman time, 3 p.m., the second lamb of the daily sacrifice is offered up on the altar for the sins of the people. Yahusha gave up his life at 3 p.m. That means he gave up the what? The spirit, the breath. Go back to Genesis chapter 1. Adam became a living soul because of what? The breath that Yah breathed into him. Okay. So Yahusha gave his life at 3 p.m. Roman time. See Matthew chapter 27, verse 46 to 50. Mark chapter 15, verse 34 through 36. And Luke chapter 23, verse 44 through 46. And as I'm going through this article, y'all, this is an awesome article. I'm going to put the link of this article in the description box, as well as the second, as well as a chart so you can have for your reference. Hold on, y'all. In Revelation chapter 5, verse 4 through 8, Saint John, this is John, standing before the throne of Yahuwah, is told to look at the Lion of the tribe of Judah, Yahudah. He's turned to look and sees. In the middle of the throne, with its four living creatures and the circle of elders, a lamb standing. Did y'all hear that? Tamid, a lamb standing that seemed to have been sacrificed. John has seen the glorified, risen Messiah at the true standing, Tamid, sacrifice, perpetually offering himself for the sins of the people before the throne of Yahuwah. Do y'all wait a minute? Let me read that part again. John has seen the glorified, risen Messiah as the true standing. He is the true what? Tamid, sacrifice, perpetually offering himself for the sins of the people before the throne of Yahuwah. So he is the atonement that we see that the Jews, the Hebrew kept in what? In Ephraim in Tishri, the 7th month. He is that atonement, that perpetual atonement, that standing atonement for us, Adam. Whether you male or female, whether you are Jew or Gentile. Do y'all see this? This go deep. Talmud references. Okay, now this is the part they refer to, and I love this article because they go back and write it out for you. Okay, hold on, y'all. Gotta get my voice right. So the Talmud references, they tell you go to the work of Josephus, read the Jewish War 6.2.1. Then go to the work of Josephus, which is reference number 2. Go to the book of Antiquities of the Jews 14.4.3, and it says this: the priest was not at all hindered from their sacred ministrations by their fear during this siege, but did still twice each day, in the morning and about the ninth hour, offer their sacrifices on the altar. Do y'all hear that? So the night hour, when we translate it to Roman time, it is 3 p.m. That is the proof about that second offering. The same time when the Messiah died upon the cross, gave up that spirit, gave up that breath, right? And we know in the morning that actually means 9 a.m. because the gospel will confirm it, whereas Torah will confirm it. Okay, let's keep going. Then we get to follow of Alexandria, Special Laws 135, 169. Accordingly, it is commanded that every day the priest should offer up 2 lambs. On at the dawn of the day, do y'all hear that? The dawn of the day, and the other in the evening, each of them being a sacrifice of thanksgiving. I cannot pronounce that word. Okay. So be a sacrifice of thanksgiving. The one for kindness which have been bestowed during the day, and the other for the mercies which have been vouchsafed in the night, which Yahuwah is incessantly and uninterruptedly pouring upon the race of men. Do y'all hear that? This is why he's known as the God of mercy, the God of grace, the God of love. Let's keep going. And on the 7th day, he doubles the numbers of victims to be offered. Okay. So on the 7th day, he doubles the numbers of victims to be offered. And we can find that in, okay, that's what Fowler wrote. Then reference number 4 in the Talmud, Mishnah, Talmud chapter 1, verse 1 through 7. And then, I'm sorry, chapter 1, verse 1 to chapter 7, verse 4. The temple gates open for morning prayer at 9 a.m. So now we get understanding how they did their prayer times. How they did their prayer times. Okay. Morning, noon, and evening. Okay. 9 a.m. of Roman time. Let's see here. 12 p.m., which is noon, and then 3 p.m. Okay. Then reference number 5 is the temple, its ministry and services, Alfred Eldershim or Eldersheen, page 108 to 114. Like I said, this is a great article to add in your collection as we study the events of the gospel dealing with the crucifixion and resurrection. Okay. And then here I also will put this in the video description box, the link of this chart, the Tabi, that means what? The perpetual daily sacrifice or the standing daily sacrifice, also known as the perpetual sacrifice. It gives us the Jewish time in comparison to Roman time and the schedule of the Tammuz sacrifice. And it's everything that we have read in that article. So take this time now to pause your screen for this chart. And take this time to pause your screen over here, and we're going to read this last paragraph if I can get to it correctly. Okay, so we have to do the best we can. Can I move this? Nah. So we have to do the best we can. I'm gonna have to go to my copy, so that way y'all know what those missing words are. Hold on for a second. Okay, thank you, Lord, for that. I got this copy here. It says the Jewish day began at sundown, right here, my brothers and sisters. The daytime was divided into 12 seasonal hours, like we read before. So the daylight hours was divided into 12 hours. Remember, the Father will remind you that we don't have minutes, seconds, okay? It's very important when you go and study the heavens. We don't have minutes and seconds in the Hebrew time. We just have hours. So we would say in the 6 hour, whether it is 6:30 or 6:59, we would say what in the 6 hour, for example. Okay, so the daytime, which is daylight, was divided into 12 seasonal hours, but the day division of hours was focused on the schedule of the Tamid sacrifice. So you can see that the divisions of the hours, like how they group them, like from dawn to the third hour, and then the third hour to the 6 hour, and the 6 hour to the ninth hour, and then the ninth hour to the 12th hour. Well, that's what they're saying. How those hours was grouped together was based upon was based upon the Tammuz sacrifice or the daily sacrifice, okay, or the standing sacrifice. In the first century, let me find where I'm at. In the first century AD, the night was divided into 4 night watches of 3 hours each. The first was from sundown to 9 p.m. The second watch is from 9 p.m. to 12. The third watch is from 12 midnight to 3 a.m. And the fourth watch is from 3 a.m. to dawn. A trumpet call known as the cock crow, okay? The trumpet call known as the cock crow signaled the end of the third, okay? The trumpet known I'm sorry, a trumpet call, known as the cock crow, signaled the end of the third and the beginning of the fourth. That's something good to know. So dealing with your night watches, because even Josephus will give us an example of that, that the shofar or the trumpet, they would say, they would announce, the end of these divisions of time. Okay. So dealing with that. So when we look at the third, it said a trumpet call known as the cock crow signaled the end of the third. So the end of the third is 3 a.m. And so from 3 a.m., okay, so a trumpet call known as the cock crow signaled the end of the third and the beginning of the fourth watch. So when you hear that shofar blowing, it signaled the end of 3 a.m. Okay, and the beginning of the fourth watch. Wow. So this is this is something to us to break ground and do some more study on, but it's going to help you to get the correct times of the phases of the crucifixion, the resurrection. Again, do not try to understand this on a Roman calendar. You cannot do that. Not even the Gregorian calendar today. Do not put Friday, Wednesday, nothing. You're going to have to go back to the Hebrew way. Okay? You're going to have to go back to the Hebrew way. All right? And looking at this Hebrew word Shegagah, okay, we see that when we look at the Pharisees, when they say they want to eat the Passover and not be defiled, it's probably dealing with the offerings that the men brought for the festival. Because you have the Passover day and then you have the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So we're going to have to do some more studies, but probably on that day they call all the offerings the Passover offering. And that is one reason I can see for that, or the Paschal offering and stuff. So we're going to do some more studying as Father give us more information on it. It's going to give us understanding what the Pharisees were doing. But now we understand why we see two different Passovers in the gospel. The first Passover we see our blessed Messiah's keeping was based on the actual Passover lamb. Now the Passover we see the Pharisees keeping, that was dealing with the offerings that the men brought when they came to a solemn feast. And we learned that the three solemn feasts, or the pilgrimage feast, was Passover, Shavuot, and Sukkot. Passover, Pentecost, and Feast of Unleavened Bread. So any offering they brought that day, whether it was a free will offering, voluntary offering, whatever offerings they brought, because they're not to come there empty-handed. They was to come according to what the Father blessed them with. Um, the Pharisee may just give it as a label as the Paschal offering or the Passover offering. Also, the Father reminded me that when we read the work of Josephus and even read the Bible, we would see that the Passover day was a part of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, and they would call that entire celebration as Feast of Unleavened Bread. So, you would see that too as well. So, like I said, I think just that, we just have to look at the terminology, whether it was inclusive, of a certain event, because it's all about language and understanding their definition of that particular language or that particular term and what that term includes. So far, what I have researched so far was I got to the conclusion that the Passover that the Pharisees were partaking was dealing with the other offerings that was presented on that day, on the Passover day. And so in saying, what that offering was, instead of saying free will offering, whatever, it was probably just given the title of the Paschal offering or the Passover offering. Okay. And like I said, we got to do more study on it and see. Um, just like through these studies here, I also learned that when it came to the Sabbath day, because remember they said that the V14th was the preparation day. Also, when they talk about the Sabbath day, because they had to quickly bury him in a new tomb, okay? Because nobody could remain on the cross. They had to quickly bury him in a new tomb before the Sabbath day came in. We also learned that that Sabbath day was a high holy day because it was a day of convocation, a day of assembly. Okay, when you go back and read Torah, so you'll learn why that Sabbath day was also a high holy day. It was not only just a holy day, but it was a high holy day because of a holy convocation day as well. All right. So getting back to, oh, I know why I put the site. I'm also going to put the link um of the Shagra, of the Shaga Ga link of the Sophia, that's dealing with the Talmuds and stuff, so you can get some understanding of those references when they say go to Mishnah, to read those things. So that way it can give you knowledge of why the Pharisees was doing what they were doing. Okay. That link will also be in the video description box. Okay. So to sum all this up, we see that the Shakara is dealing with the offerings that are brought to these holy feast days or holy festival days, which is Passover, Pentecost, and Feast of Tabernacles. Okay? So, which would give us the great understanding of what the Pharisees was keeping. They was keeping, um, they was dealing with the offerings, dealing with the um shagara. I mean shagirah. Forgive my tongue, y'all. And I'm trying to go to this picture here. That's what it was dealing with so far, what we gather. And also we see through the Agape Bible study, we see that it gives us a greater understanding of the times that has taken place during the time when the Messiah was accused by the people to the time of his death, his crucifixion and stuff. So it's going to confirm and set some things in stone, like give you the truth. And what the Father is saying now, you cannot come in part of the book. You have to come in the whole volume of the book because, again, through his prophets, because you know, Prophet Moses wrote Torah. Torah is going to be your witness, your proof of when these times actually took place. Because first you got to get the Hebrew time. And then once you get the Hebrew time, then you can convert it into Roman time. But it's always first through the Hebrew. So meaning that you need to study the Hebrew calendar first. You need to study the Hebrew time first because what the Messiah was doing or the work that he was performing was based on Torah. And you're not going to get away from Torah. So in order to understand those scriptures that has now been translated into English, we have to go back to the old. All right, my brothers and sisters, I hope you enjoyed this lesson to um, the Pharisees' Passover, Torah, or Talmud, which was it? And so far from what we see, they were still coming from Torah, but they were showing us how the festival day, which is Passover, how those offerings can also be given the same title as the Passover offering. They would say what the Paschal offerings on that day. Okay. But we're going to do more study and we're going to confirm whether it was Torah or whether it was or law. All right, love you, my brothers and sisters. Continue to preach that the kingdom of heaven is at hand, for it's truly at hand. Make sure the people receive salvation as written in Romans chapter 10 and baptize the people in the name of Yahusha HaMashiach. For the Lamb set the example of the water baptism and the Holy Spirit baptism. And if you have no one to baptize you, whether it's in water or in the Spirit, the Father made this easy. You can baptize yourself in water, for the water is the second witness in the earth and the heavens, and his earth is the witness unto the Father, testify on your behalf of you enter into the renewed marriage, into the new covenant or renewed covenant. Also, the same with the Holy Spirit baptism. All you have to do is ask in the name of Yahushua HaMashiach, and he shall give it unto you according to your heart and your faith and your words. Now we have a greater understanding of Shekagah. And now at this time, we see that's what the Pharisees was keeping. And we have more confirmation on the biblical times of what took place on the Messiah crucifixion. And also I gave you the other part dealing with his resurrection. And we see Torah and the father prophets will give you the answer. No matter what, no matter whether it has been mistranslated, no matter if they was using Roman times, we can see that the Father will give us confirmation on the answers that we seek. Love you all and shalom.